Zepparelli's coming.
Well, he can be here later.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We can all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, well, moving right along. Our roll call. Chairman Parisi's here. Vice Chairman Schuessler.
Here.
Commissioner Paul. Here. Commissioner Sanchez.
Here.
Commissioner Nugent.
Here.
Commissioner Zamparelli is not here. I understand he's supposed to come. Commissioner Zatar, I don't believe he's going to be here. I think he was. But anyway, that's who here. Okay. Okay, well, call this meeting to order. First order of business is approval of the November 7th meeting, of which we all received a copy.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
move the minutes of the November 7th, 2023 Plan Commission meeting be approved as presented.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Schuessler. Second. Seconded by Commissioner Paul. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. No objections? Okay. I move we open public hearings with public hearing number 2023-0915, substantive amendment, revise and update development of subdivision extractions, dedication of land and fees in lieu of dedication.
Second.
Motion and second by Commissioner Schuessler. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, staff?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There we go. So the first case is for the update of 5-112H of the Land Development Code in regards to subdivision exactions and what we call impact fees. First of all, just a little brief background on impact fees. What we're trying to do is ensure that there are adequate resources and facilities that will support growth-related capital expenses for new residential development. The village has collected impact fees for many years, but some of the ordinance has not been updated since 1994. So one of the main purposes of this update is to make sure that we are currently in line with the industry standard, state statute, as well as the current costs to provide land and cash for these impact fees. The new draft ordinance will include impact fees for school, fire districts, library, police, parks, and village infrastructure. The new fees that we're adding are for police, fire, as well as the village infrastructure fee is being added to better allocate the funds. So instead of just being for transportation related needs as it is currently, it can be used for sidewalks, street lighting, curbs and gutters, things that are directly attributable to a specific development that would cause the need for new capital expenses by the village. Again, these fees are only attributed to new growth. So anything in the budget, it has to be specifically related to new residents being added or a specific development that's generating new residents and a fee or capital expense associated with that. Finally, there is no statutory requirement for the village to collect impact fees. They actually are, it's discretionary, but we do that. And if we do that, we are going to require that each of the taxing districts provide a signature on an intergovernmental agreement that outlines what's in the ordinance, but also provides indemnity for the village, or indemnifies the village in the case that the impact fees are challenged at the court level. So we are collecting the fees for them. We will distribute the fees to the taxing bodies, but should there be a challenge, the intergovernmental agreement will protect the village from that legal challenge and the costs associated with it. In similar respect, if this ordinance gets passed and the taxing bodies do not agree with the terms or do not want to sign the intergovernmental agreement, then that portion of the fee will not be collected on their behalf and distributed to them. Oops, wrong one. So what they do, in order to generate an impact fee or to collect an impact fee based on the number of new residents, we use student generation tables specifically for the school districts. Those tables are actually remaining unchanged. One of the values that's being changed, that's being, in the update, is the value of an acre of residential land. So in 1996, it was $90,000. It has increased to $300,000. So really what'll happen if once all the data is collected from the different taxing districts and the full impact is realized for a particular development, there are provisions in the ordinance that allow the developer to challenge this using his own data, to provide that, his or her own data. And also, it will give the village the ability to look at the fee and assess them over a period of time. So, for example, as the years go on in the ordinance, there will be an escalator based on the CPI for each year so that we're keeping up with the current trends in the market. But if, for example, we see that an impact is significant, then it gives the village the ability to phase this over time. Unfortunately, we don't have all of the data to make that determination today, but we're updating the methodology and giving some examples of how it might change. So in general, aside from the school and park impact fees, the police, fire, village impact fees will be calculated by using a 10-year annual average of capital costs, removing the high and low values, so removing the outliers. But that capital cost is not the entire capital cost that a taxing body uses. It will have to be specifically attributable to new growth. So if, for example, the fire district had to build a new facility or they needed a new piece of equipment because a new development was built, let's say it was too tall and they needed something to accommodate that, that specific capital expense would be included, but not their entire capital outlay. Then you get it to a per capita by dividing their 10-year capital average by the total population that we have, which is currently 58,703 residents, and you multiply that by the total number of new residents. In the ordinance, it offers some clarification to that. So for example, if a development is phased over time and there's already existing single-family homes there or some kind of residential, it includes, so you subtract those out. So you're only ever calculating the impact fee on the number of net new residents. So if a development is amended and there's an existing portion, that's not calculated, but the new portion will be. And that's how the formula is explained in the ordinance. So to give the Plan Commission an idea of these numbers, I want to be very clear with you. They are estimates, and they're estimates on the high end because we used the information that we could find that was available, as well as we used all capital costs. So we didn't outline, because they haven't been categorized this way, specific to new developments, but that will be something that will be coming. We use their entire capital cost to give you an idea of what the new fee could be. Currently, we charge a flat impact fee for the library at $125 per dwelling unit or per residential permit. We calculated the average capital cost, the per capita cost to be $21.79. And then from the generation tables, there are 2.374 students per a three-bedroom attached townhome. So the updated cost per that same permit will be $51.73. For the park and cash, or park and school cash in lieu and or land donation, the cost of land is increased by 3 1/3 times. So the fee collected will reflect that same increase because that's the only number that's changing. So there will be approximately $4,000 for a 3-bedroom townhome, the same 3-bedroom townhome. And similarly, the police impact fee will be calculated in the same way, and the cost for a 3-bedroom attached single-family home will be $3.71 per permit. In the same way, and if the average capital cost for the Orland Fire District is $400,000, the per capita would be $6.81, and the total cost on that 3-bedroom attached single-family will be $18.60. Currently, the village infrastructure fee is a little bit more general because we haven't calculated the data in the same way to directly attribute it to it. But right now, we charge a $1,500 fee for the road exactions, and it is anticipated that, first of all, this will do one of two things. It will spread the impact fee to the appropriate buckets so that it's not necessarily spent just on transportation. It can be spent on stormwater infrastructure. It can be spent on curbs and gutters. It can be spent on other things that are associated with the road, but not necessarily just the road. And in addition to that, it's unlikely that this fee will exceed what we are already collecting. And staff is recommending approval of this amendment, but I'm here, happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, thank you.
problem.
We have no one here from the public, so do any of our commissioners have any comments or questions?
I do.
Commissioner Schussler?
This is really a big change from what has been done in the past. And that's why I'm a little bit concerned, as indicated to Carrie when I called her this morning.
Sure.
We need to, when I say we, I mean the village, the plan commission, the village board. We need to be sure that when we do this, that we're not making the housing non-competitive. And by that I mean, when all these fees are figured in, the builder has to be able to make a profit. And if he can build houses much more cheaper in other places because their fees are less than our fees, then they're not going to build here. They're going to build in New Lenox or in Mokina or Lamont, and, 6 other places we could mention.
Sure.
So I understand that you don't have the numbers yet, that you're just, projecting. That's my concern. And I agree with having impact fees, with having exaction fees. I was on the school board in the 1980s when we didn't have a land cash ordinance, and the village had refused to do anything that would provide land to build schools. And we were going through a period at that time when there was a big influx of students because there was a lot of construction going on. And the village board at the time said, no, we collect money for parks, but we're not going to do it for schools because the statute doesn't specifically allow it. Well, a builder challenged the fees they had in Naperville, and I forget the name of the case, but that case went to the Illinois Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that impact fees, exaction fees are appropriate as long as the amount is in relationship to the impact that the development is going to bring to the village or the city. So we went back to the village and asked them to adopt a land cash donation ordinance that applied to the schools in addition to the parks. And they said no. So I was involved in drafting an ordinance that was presented to the village board to include the schools. And the information went out to all the residents in the school district. And they prevailed upon the village board to adopt not the exact ordinance that we proposed, but one that was reasonable. I'm not saying we proposed an unreasonable one, but there was negotiation with regard to the size of the school sites that would be required. So I think it's an appropriate thing to have impact fees, but we need to be sure they're reasonable. I have a couple of specific questions regarding what you proposed. On page 6, and some of these will clarify what you've got here. On page 6, under A, criteria for determining land cash contributions, number 3 has this $300,000 figure, but I think what's missing there is something that says that's per acre.
Yes.
So I think that should be, and there's a couple of other places where the $300,000 figure appears. I think it should be clarified that that's $300,000 per acre. With regard to number 5, under in the same area, what is the source of that table 2 and table 3? I also think, table 2 really. Where does that come from?
So
Is that from that school, that outfit that?
well, in a roundabout way, so it's from the updated ordinance that Naperville used after their development and exaction ordinance was challenged. So what you referenced before, we actually used their updated their generation tables.
Is this the same one that's in the existing ordinance, only
Correct,
updated?
yeah.
Okay, that's, yeah. It's some I can't remember the name of it. It's some school advisory board that takes the data and crunches it and comes up with these tables.
Correct, yeah, most municipalities use the same one, and we're utilizing the same.
It's well accepted. Okay, on page 9, under dedication of land or fees in lieu of land for parks and recreation sites, and B, fair share donation formula, talks about a ratio of 7 acres per 1,000. The present ordinance, I think, is 10 per 1,000. What's the rationale for reducing the park acreage?
So in the current ordinance, in the initial section, it says 10 and then when they go to the calculation, it actually uses 7.
Okay,
So it has both.
okay, so
I
it's
think it
no
was
change
just,
there.
it's a clarification.
Oh, down in 3, there's another 300,000.
300,000, thank you.
Have you discussed with the fire district and the school district and the library what's being proposed here?
So the village is, on Monday, the 27th, will have their joint review board meeting for the Main Street Triangle TIF. In addition to doing that, into conducting the joint review board meeting, we are going to be introducing the impact fee ordinance, as well as some other items that the school district and fire districts had questioned on. But we had previously, about 3 weeks ago, sent them the draft ordinance for their consideration. So we're going to make a similar presentation on Monday afternoon and entertain any questions, but they've had some time to chew on it a little bit.
Okay. Down under fire and rescue impact fee number A, it indicates that the fee is the established annual average capital cost for fire and rescue services, which you showed up in that slide, the previous
Yeah.
slide. And you said, when you're talking about a 10-year average, for the fire district, they've built out their stations pretty much for their entire district. I mean, I don't think they're ever going to add another fire station, because when they did that, I was on the village board, and they presented to us what their rationale was, that they were attempting to get geographical coverage, and there might be stations in areas that really didn't have much in the way of homes at the time, but they were planning for when the village was eventually built out. And I think, if I remember right, maybe you know that number, I think the village, when all the vacant land is filled in, is expected to be somewhere around 80,000, I think.
Somewhere around 75 or 80, it
Yeah.
rings a bell.
So it's probably unlikely that they're going to have to, acquire additional land and build another building. But they, of course, have a need for fire trucks and ambulances. So if you go 10 years back and you look at how many fire trucks they bought and how many ambulances they bought, I'm having trouble relating that to what is the impact for residents that are coming for a new subdivision. Because what you said was, well, we're only supposed to be looking at what is going to be needed because of the new subdivision, but we're looking at the numbers for what was needed for the whole village over 10 years. So how do we square that?
Yeah, I guess that's a really good question. I think what we're trying to do is give us a number that's, that we can compare to how they've provided the services that already exist. So what have they used, how much money have they spent to set the base for, the services that exist? And then moving forward, we're adding in what they are specifically attributable to the development itself. So I guess that's what was recommended by, our consultant that provided this.
Are there other municipalities that use this formula?
Yes.
A lot of them, or is it?
I believe so. I don't know exactly how many or which, but I know that he was updating this in anticipation, or basically worked with Naperville on their updates as well.
Is this the new way that Naperville does it now?
This is the way, yeah, this is a formula of that, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I could comment on that, the idea is to, from the past 10 years, is to get a per capita average figure over a 10-year period, and then apply that to potential new development.
Kind of like the way they build a tax bill.
Correct.
Anything else? A couple of more. I don't mean to monopolize, but I got a couple other questions. Okay, so the law enforcement impact fee, it's unlikely we're going to need another police station or an addition because I was involved in doing that police station and we built that to accommodate an 80,000 population village. So we're talking about police cars probably and stuff like that.
Yeah, and for example, I mean, this, if they're expanding the need of training, we're doing a training facility in the firing range, so that capital cost, if it's attributable to some new growth, then that could be accounted for as well.
Okay. Okay, the same theory under library, I see that, okay.
Right.
When you get to the definitions of capital assets, capital costs, and capital improvements, under capital costs, there's one of them that specifically exempts roads. Oh, capital improvements, I think it is. No, where is it? Thought it was somewhere where it says except roads. Oh, yeah, it's under village public infrastructure, number 30. Talks about sidewalks, streetlights, curbs, et cetera, but not constituting roadway improvements. So it sounds to me like you can't use any of this money for road improvements, for roadway widening.
Correct. So my understanding with the state statute is that there's specific requirements that there are requirements that are specific to you charging road exaction fees that require not only a study of the existing roadway system and network, but also what the new development is, how it's impacting your existing level of service. And in this instance, we're going to be able to, we're removing that so that we don't have to continue to update that study in terms of for the entire village and how those are, I guess, how those facilities are being affected, yeah.
So you're using a lot of words to say, I think, that none of the fees that are collected can be used for roadway improvement, right? There's no-
I'm saying, yes, the fees that we're replacing will not be used for roadway improvements, but they'll be used for
Okay, and there's
other
going to be
village.
no longer, there's going to be an exaction fee for roads?
Correct. This will replace that, yeah.
Well, it's not replacing it if you can't use it for
Well,
roads.
we're removing the road exaction fee and we're adding a village infrastructure fee that does not include that.
But, wait a minute. The village infrastructure fee says it does not include roadway improvements.
And, correct. So we're removing the existing fee that is for road exactions.
Right.
And we are not replacing that.
Okay,
We're only adding the village infrastructure fee as defined that you see in the ordinance.
okay. So it seems like road improvements are pretty critical around here, like widening 143rd Street and Wolf Road, the two big ones coming up. And we're not going to collect any money to do that then.
That's correct. Through the impact fees, we are not collecting money to do that.
I think that's a big mistake, but that's my personal opinion.
Sure. And I understand the concern, and I think what
No,
we'll do in
okay.
between is to get some better clarification from the attorney that drafted this and assisted us with it, just so that we know exactly why we're not doing that.
So I know the village board reads our minutes, so I'm going to go on record as saying it's a big mistake to eliminate the road exaction fee, whether you do it separately or you include it in the village public infrastructure umbrella. I think we need a road exaction fee for the roads that need to be widened in the next 20 years.
Okay.
That's okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. How does that level with the fact that the roads that the two that you mentioned, are they're county?
Oh, because whether it's state or county, there's a significant village buy-in that we have to come up with. And for those two roads, they're both state roads. I don't know, do you know what the formula is? It's like somewhere between 15, 20%, I think, is what we have to come up with locally, isn't it?
Locally, yeah, it's 20% of the total cost of the
So
improvement.
20% of $26 million, isn't that the 143rd?
It could be, yeah, I don't know. the
And you say,
current-
and that should not be a part of an impact fee?
That's not going to be, no, yeah.
Under this proposal, and I
Under
think
this
that's a
proposal.
mistake, is what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, well,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
of course.
Okay,
Commissioner Paul.
Sure.
just want to make sure I was understanding you right. For development that's geared primarily, for example, to seniors, I don't know how this thing. I've been playing with this thing all night here, trying to get it to.
All right, we can hear each other.
Yeah, all right,
Thank you.
okay, thanks. Like the old days with Daley, when they used to cut microphones off when they didn't want to have somebody talk.
Yeah, we
No, this is an easy question, no. As far as like the senior developments, for example, are they exempt
They're
from
exempt,
the
yeah.
schools, the school money?
Correct. So
Okay.
there's specific stipulations so that they can't just say that they're age restricted. They have to have it in the covenants of the HOA, and that's included in the ordinance, but they would be exempt. That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Nugent?
So mine's more general than his specific, but what's probably our biggest development right now, Jeans at 143rd and Wolf?
That's probably the biggest
150.
one now, yeah. Previous to that would be Orland Ridge.
So I know you guys already have a lot of leeway and you still have it, but like he put that tot lot or whatever it's, that park pieces in the front. So how does that work normally? They decide they want it, or by the time that you added the number of units he had, you said he had to have something?
Yeah, so
And then
basically the way.
That one's a combo too, right? There's a donation and that piece?
That's why they commonly refer to as land cash. So if there's a certain amount of land that they have to dedicate for those purposes for a park, if they can't accommodate it on the site or the village thinks that it would be better accommodated elsewhere, then they can provide the cash. So usually it's a combination of both. In this instance, it allows for both, but the numbers that I use would be if it was strictly just cash.
Okay, and then I was gonna use a couple of our sites and use examples, so like, 142nd Place and 80th Avenue, the ranch duplexes.
Yeah,
So I did ask when we were doing the school expansions, that one generated 0 children. So, but it's not, age restricted. So like a spot like that, and then it is its own solo cul-de-sac kind of, there's nothing to connect to. But on stuff like that, how do we decide we want a park on site and the fee and then there are two for the schools, they're not exempt, but someone like that where we know they're not gonna generate a lot of kids, they pay the same fees though, right?
I guess the trouble with saying they're not going to, currently they may not, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't. And that's, I think, why the ordinance written the way that it is. The other thing is, as far as like how we decide it, the formula is the same for everyone based on the number, the 7 acres per 1,000 residents. So however many residents you're anticipated to generate from your development, that's where the land ratio comes in. And then you have the opportunity to either dedicate that portion of land. In that instance, where it's a smaller site, we may take just the cash donation. But regardless, what this update is doing is actually, right now, since the cost of the land is so much higher than what the fee we would collect, is we're actually right-sizing the amount of cash in lieu that we're receiving. So if you offer that, you're getting much more of a discount now than you would be after the update.
So do we have many sites like, say like the 104th, 108th corridor, where, we've put in some decent sized subdivisions and there's still like parcels that are gonna be adjacent. So have we already planned like with phases 5 or 6 and the 15 acres next to it, whether or not it needs another park? And I'm just thinking from the developer's perspective, they're like, well, you already have a park over here and a park over there. Or if he wants one, you tell him we don't really want one. How do we
So
decide?
it's not necessarily like, so we kind of do that as far as like the plan, they do it during the comprehensive plan. Every, 10 years or so, we update it to look at what the facilities are, and there's a parks an open space kind of chapter that we go into that. But on a day-to-day basis, if a developer comes in, you kind of just look at where the existing park facilities are and what they have, right? And then is it accessible to where your new development is happening? We don't necessarily, I mean, have the forethought in, every year to look at what's, to do that kind of analysis. But as they come in, say, well, if they put a park in the center of this development, it'd be better if they located it to the north, because when the rest develops, then they can share that area. And we kind of do have some of those steps, but it's on a case-by-case basis, really.
So I guess where I was going with that then, so when the developers come in, obviously sometimes they want like a park as part of, make their neighborhood attractive. So sometimes we have to tell them you need one, or,
We always tell them you need one. So if
So
you're,
if you get like
gonna
that kind of
build,
size, you
yeah,
need
if you're
one.
gonna build residences, that meets you have to provide certain portions of that area for, parks and open space and/or a cash in lieu payment. You must.
and then my last one was, I don't think we really have it, but you're familiar with Glen Eagles in Lamont, the former golf course?
I am. I'm more familiar with it as a golf course, though.
So it ended up with Pulte, right? And so Pulte didn't go for the high end where Lamont can have that. And I guess they're very typical buyer of those homes are 3 kids. So and those homes are going up like a plain field thing. So that's gonna be a major impact on everything. So do they get charged more? I mean, but we can't even really, we don't have the ability to have like a Glen Eagles, right?
Well, I can't speak to exactly what's happening there, but really what it is, most
They're gonna have
municipalities.
like 500 units. Some of them are townhomes, and the homes, they're saying like all the homes are like families with 3 kids plus.
Yeah, I mean, what happens in most municipalities is that there's an ordinance like this that applies to everything, whether it's 500 homes or it's 50, or, it doesn't really factor that in. But if you're getting a very large-scale development, I can say that there's opportunities potentially to negotiate fees that are associated with village, right? So if it's associated with parks, we may have an opportunity to negotiate that fee in favor of something else if it's a development of that scale, right? So they might, for example, if you're talking about a golf course, if they're providing 3 times the amount of open space because they're preserving some of the natural areas and the topography and things like that, you may be able to waive some of those fees, or you would ask the board if they would consider that when you're doing a development. So there's opportunities for that. Unfortunately, we can't necessarily negotiate with fees that aren't for our taxing district. So the other ones will be set. It would be up to that taxing body to make the decision on whether or not they wanted to offer some kind of waiver because of the, general good or impact or, service that they're providing by building so many homes at once. But these are all kind of general responses.
So we have something major again. I mean, we have a few corridors that could happen. But I mean, like even where McNaughton's building off Wolf Road,
Yeah.
that's not major kid impact for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that came to. It was 50 single-family units. It's been amended a couple times for townhomes. So, but I think the standard mix of residents has changed a little bit. So to say that townhomes don't generate as many kids, I don't know if that's the case anymore, but it could be.
But we do have some big parcels that could be grabbed.
Yeah, the majority of the remaining residential land, or remaining land to be developed is owned by a single residential developer. So I think if you look on our zoning map and you see the zoning classification LSPD, that's all Gallagher and Henry land, that's governed by a development agreement, that's set to expire soon. But regardless, the village anticipates the majority of that land will utilize for residential purposes. So there are some very large tracts of land that are available for development. It's just, I think your eye kind of glazes over because you see it as grayed out now instead of what it actually is.
Several,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
The Gallagher and Henry land, it's been vacant for a long time, but it could develop very, very quickly. Gallagher and Henry, they're not doing a lot of building. All of a sudden, they could decide they're going to sell that land to some developer, and we could have a 500-unit
Well,
development on short
Absolutely.
order.
this commission, I don't know how many years ago it was, but it was several years ago, we particularly looked at that huge parcel, north of 139th Street, 108th Avenue, when you're going into
The Tampere Lake,
What?
Tampere Lake.
Yeah, by Brittany Glen and all that?
Yeah.
And, they had already, my gosh, they had, I don't know how, a lot of lots, like 110 lots. I'm talking, several years ago, nothing's ever come on it, but the question is, what do we have left? And, there are a couple of substantial, places left, even on down LaGrange Road, just south of 183rd. You recall there was going to be a huge development there.
750 homes.
750 homes and surrounded by, naturally, then the townhomes and the condos, and that never took off. So there's some potential out there.
Speaking of Gallagher, 3 of his old neighborhoods, Lamont, Covington Knolls, Farmingdale, and Woodridge, and one of the Homer Glens, are all literally on their last block.
Do what?
Their last blocks. He actually opened up, he's finishing 3 neighborhoods. So, I mean, he might decide to focus energy somewhere, and
Could be,
obviously,
yeah.
I don't know where he has land, but he clearly has it here.
Yeah.
But he's about to finish 3 neighborhoods, so he might have the energy to come here,
Yeah.
so.
One thing I know about Orland is if there's available land, people will try to build on it.
We will what?
People will try to build on it.
Yes.
Eventually.
It's really interesting to me. I mean, it's, you threw out that statistic that we hadn't looked at this in 29 years.
Sure.
I mean, so, my gosh, it's timely, and obviously, in what we've grown in that time, I mean, it's certainly, impact fees should be a living organism that we're looking at. And I think it's important and I'm glad, we're keeping an eye on this and measuring ourselves against, what other villages may or may not have been doing, So this is good, yeah.
Well, 7 of our schools just added on, so we have
Yeah.
capacity.
Let's see, we heard, anybody else? No? Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
regarding case number 2023-0915, I move to approve the staff recommended action as presented in the staff report to the Plan Commission for this case.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Paul, in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, well, I move we close public hearing number 2023-0915.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Move we open public hearing number 2023-0896, substantive amendment, modify entitlement review process.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Paul. I guess we're all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Staff?
I'd like to begin by requesting that the staff report is entered into the record as written and as presented for this case. This case focuses on the changes to the entitlement review process in Section 5101. We're proposing to have final engineering and final landscaping of staff approval as an administrative approval after plans are approved by the Board of Trustees. And this shift is to aim to emphasize efficiency for the village and for developers. It saves a lot of time and cost for applicants as well as the village. This is part of an ongoing implementation of our LEI process. Currently, our process now is that staff finds that the preliminary plans are sufficient enough to go to the Plan Commission, and then the Plan Commission obviously recommends approval, and that proceeds to the Committee of the Whole or the Board of Trustees. And then after the Committee of the Whole, final landscaping and final engineering plans are recommended by staff for approval prior to going to the Board of Trustees. So we'll go to the Plan Commission, staff will approve final engineering and final landscaping, and then it will go to the Board of Trustees. And this amendment implements a new way of approving the plans at the board, which would be like 80% plans, which is a common industry term. These 80% plans will encompass the essential details of a development, providing a clear representation of the project before final engineering and final landscaping are approved. And these 80% plans undergo none or minimal changes when receiving final landscaping and final engineering after the board. So, for example, 80% plans would be a building is being built, or a development petition comes in for a new site plan. We review it at the Plan Commission. After the Plan Commission, we focus on some tweaks or anything to it, then it'll go to the Board of Trustees. And then maybe after the Board of Trustees, maybe this water main needs to be moved. Or maybe there's a small adjustment that doesn't really change any of the board approvals of the plan. It would just have to be in substantial conformance with that plan. And then obviously, yeah, when the projects are approved, they will be conditioned to be in substantial conformance with the board approval. And as far as compliance, if the project deviates away from the board-approved 80% plans, then the project will have to go through the public hearing process, which does happen currently. If a project strays away from the board-approved plans when it's being built, it would have to come back to the Plan Commission and repost the public hearing, and we'll start that process over.
In my understanding, I guess I'm not understanding, but in my understanding that the projects, development committee looks at them, and they come to the plan commission. And then if we don't get a unanimous to go to committee of the whole, are we placing, is that going from development to the committee of the whole before it comes to the plan commission?
I'm sorry, so currently, we would administratively approve the preliminary plans and then bring that forward to the Plan Commission.
Yes.
And that's what you review. If the project receives unanimous approval, it would proceed to
The board.
the board, but in between the Plan Commission and the board, it would need final engineering approval. So our
Okay.
engineering and landscapers would have to approve
right.
that.
Thanks
Yeah.
for clarifying.
Sorry, thanks for the clarification. So then, also as a part of this amendment, we'll be removing the flow chart from the code. It's a pretty complex flow chart because it does encompass every single type of project that we have, which makes the process pretty overwhelming for new applicants. So in summary, this amendment would emphasize efficiency and project progression. The Board of Trustees would approve 80% plans, and the petitioner would work on outstanding minor landscape and engineering adjustments conditioned to the board-approved plans. Additionally, this amendment has less costs and risks associated with having all final plans set in stone prior to a board vote on the project itself. And staff asks that the Plan Commission recommend approval of the Land Development Code for Section 5101A, C, and K.
Do we have any comments? I don't have any more questions. Do we have any questions for my commissioners?
No, we kind of knew what's coming. You told us
kinda-
about it after some projects.
Yeah. I was just here kind of,
It's all technical stuff. Mr. Chairman,
yes.
regarding case number 2023-0896, move to approve the staff recommended action as presented in the staff report to the Plan Commission for this case, and I move to close public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I move we open public hearing,
Second.
number 2023-0897, modifying residential best management practices.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Once again, staff.
I respectfully request the staff report be accepted into the record as written and as presented during the meeting. So we're looking to modify our residential BMPs, or our best management practices. The goal of this amendment is to establish a maximum lot coverage allowance that is more easily understood by not only the public, but also more enforceable by the staff. We're also looking to remove the monitoring and management plan required for naturalized landscaping. The current process allows residents to utilize BMPs as a way to expand their impervious lot coverage, but often residents fail to maintain these BMPs. This causes staff to retroactively apply the BMPs, or it requires staff to unfortunately tell the homeowners that they need to remove or substantially modify the improvements that they've done to such project. The proposed process that we're showing here is to remove the provision that allows increased lot coverage through the use of BMPs. To do this, we're looking to establish one maximum lot coverage for each of the residential district zones. And we calculated this based on an average of the maximum ranges allowable within each residential district. First, we're going to start with section 6-305. The monitoring and management plan is used to assess if the proposed naturalized landscaping is sufficient for increased lot coverage through BMP allowances. However, because we're no longer allowing BMPs, it's no longer necessary to have an M&M plan or this monitoring and management plan. In section E1, this amendment seeks to remove all the BMP allowances, allowing the maximum lot coverage for E1 to be established by averaging the maximum lot coverage with and without those BMPs. The maximum would be 30% here. Similar thing here, removing all BMP allowances, taking the average between the maximum with BMPs, which would be 45%, and then without BMPs, 35%, taking that average and that being the maximum, which would be 40%. Similar thing through R2, R2A, R3, R3A, R4. The difference here, which should be noted, is that for single-family side-loaded garages, that we will still allow that additional 3% lot coverage because of the side-loaded garage. We'll still allow that 3% extra for in R4 where there is a side-loaded garage. And then multifamily will still retain that 60% maximum lot coverage. And then for the RSB district, same thing, removing BMPs, allowing that maximum lot coverage to just be an average of the maximum with and without those BMPs. The staff recommends that the Plan Commission approve the Land Development Code amendments for sections listed here as presented in the attached amendment report that you guys received.
Okay. All right, I don't think there's any purpose for discussion here. Is there? No? Okay. No?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
regarding case number 2023-0897, I move to approve the staff recommended action as presented in the staff report to the Plan Commission for this case and move to close public hearing.
I'll second that.
Oh, go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. Will we open public hearing number 2023-0898, substantive amendment, clarify driveway and driveway apron regulations.
Second.
Okay. Anybody opposed? No, okay. Staff.
I respectfully request that the staff report be accepted into the record as written and as presented during this meeting. So this amendment here will ensure that there's consistency with future changes by specifying the construction requirements and specifications within the village code, and we'll also refer to, sorry about that, and then we'll refer to all things related to zoning regulations within the land development code as it relates to driveways and driveway aprons. This amendment will also make the land development code and the village code more efficient and easier, not only for the public, but also for staff. So everything in blue here will be moved out of the land development, out of the village code and into the land development code because the information pertains to zoning related regulations. The proposed changes here will point the reader to the land development code for driveway width requirements. And we have removed this duplicate phrase. And And we've inserted that blue information from the previous slide here because it pertains to zoning-related regulations that were originally within the village code, but they're now going to be with this proposed amendment in the land development code because they relate to zoning regulations for driveways and driveway aprons, and any references referring to construction or construction specifications of driveways or driveway aprons will be moved to the village code, as we have here. The staff recommends that the Plan Commission continue the case to the December 5th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting.
Why?
The reason for this is just because we want to make sure that we're getting all of these construction specifications out of the land development code and into the village code. And we just were not able to make sure it was all out of the land development code prior to this meeting. And we want to be efficient in how we move things all at once instead of these bits and pieces.
And just for your information, all the blued out section and everything was not part of our packet. We didn't get that page.
Oh, apologies for that.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Schuster?
regarding case number 2023-0898, I move to approve the staff recommended action, which is to continue to December 5th, as presented in the staff report to the Plan Commission for this case.
Second.
And can I add to the motion, can I ask Commissioner Schussler to amend his motion to include the specific time, since to continue, it needs to be to a date and time certain. So that would be to the meeting time of 7 PM, correct?
Yes, I agree with that.
Thank you. Second on the amended motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Finally, I move to open public hearing 2023-0899, substantive amendment adding new permitted use to the open space district.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Staff?
Yes, this amendment would allow for civic and fraternal nonprofit organizations to be permitted in the open space district. And this is because the open space district is suitable for gathering places and recreational areas. In addition to supporting like community interaction, civic and fraternal nonprofit organizations are in line with the goals of our open space district as well as our comprehensive plan. And it's worth noting that the purpose of this amendment is to preserve inclusivity and flexibility of uses appropriate for the open space district by providing different accommodations for various civic groups. And as always, any permitted use in this district would still have to conform to the bulk requirements of the code. And staff recommends that the Plan Commission approve the Land Development Code amendments for Section 6-213.
It's a good proposal. Regarding case number 2023-0898, I move to approve the staff recommended action as presented in the staff report to the Plan Commission and move to close public hearings.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any other business? Okay. If not, I move that we adjourn at 7:53 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. A lot to cover here. I mean, you really have to, my God, you really have to absorb a lot of information, don't you? Yeah, I'm impressed. Thank you.
Okay, Marcus, we've adjourned, so this isn't part of the record. Just for information, what building is this funeral parlor going into? Premier Funeral Service?
That would be the former bank. I